Morning, everyone. So I wanted to start the vlogs today with a thank you to the Moss Haus daily vlogs for their advice. Jen and I both really genuinely appreciate it. Just the fact that someone took the time out of their day to reach out to us. It's really encouraging. And what you guys said definitely kept me thinking. It sort of made me second guess what I've been saying the last couple of days, which definitely isn't a bad thing. Just in terms of, what I was saying about trying to make the blog more interesting. So basically what was going through my mind is, after I read the comment, is I thought that by adding a little structured discussion to the vlogs, in a way I might be buying into the, doing it for other people aspect of vlogging. But I slept on it, and honestly I'm enjoying it. I don't have a blog and I don't write incredibly well, so it just feels like a really good outlet. And I sort of have a little background in public speaking, and yesterday writing up that little bit of dialogue and then sort of trying to deliver it as best I could, it felt pretty good, because that's not something I've done in a really long time. So anyway, long story short, the little monologue soliloquies, whatever you want to call them, they're gonna stay, at least for a while, until I get bored of doing that. And who knows, maybe someday I'll say something interesting. Also, more importantly, this is probably the last time, at least for a while, I want to talk about what I want to do with the vlogs. I'm just gonna try and, make content, put it out there. I'm sure you're all fascinated with what I have to say. It just seems a little silly at this point. Yesterday I talked about how leaving ambiguous statements alone in news articles, statements, that sort of thing, really sort of makes me uncomfortable. It was in response to an article put out by Vice. I talk about it more in yesterday's video, and I'll put another link in the description. Now that I read it for the third or fourth time, I feel like one of the things I disliked most about it is how negative it was. Again, it's not that I didn't like the article. I don't think anything they said was outright wrong. I do think it was really well done. But while admittedly Mr. Obama's statement does have a lot of really interesting implications and definitely does need to be examined, I just think that their response was really incredibly harsh. So maybe one of the other reasons that I think they should have explored this concept a little more in the article is just to make it a little more palatable, a little less, reactionary and inciting. I could be wrong, maybe that's what they were going for, but it's just my thoughts. The reason shirking around the not so easy to define portion of something really gets to me is because that's the sort of thing I see really often in news sources and political figures. I really don't like. They do it all the time. Biggest example I can think of is when people defend DOMA by saying that it protects the sanctity of marriage. Now, sanctity literally means the state or quality of being holy, saintly, or sacred. Obviously that screams religion, and I'm not going to go into the church and state thing, because that's a completely different discussion. But whether they're using the term literally or not, what implications does that have in today's world? Whose lives does it affect, and how does it affect them? There's just a lot of questions that don't have obvious answers. And don't get me wrong, if you can Google it, and there's lots of people who do give you reasons, and I give them props for doing that, regardless of whether or not I think those reasons are valid. But on the other hand, there's just as many people who will use that line that it protects the sanctity of marriage without explaining what it means, and they'll just use it over and over and over again. They'll drive it into you until, the people who are listening, believe that it's a valid argument, and probably until they themselves believe it's a valid argument too. I just think that in today's world, where there's so many people who are so radically split over so many different issues, that using these ambiguous concepts, it just isn't conducive to the type of discourse that we need. Ultimately, it seems like when people try and drive those phrases into you, it's either because they don't totally understand the issues themselves, they're trying to deceive you or everyone, or they're trying to defend their argument with a point that they know is weak, but they try and use that ambiguity as a mask for their weak argument. At this point, I've gotten so totally far and away from the Vice article. And for that, I apologize. You know, like I said in the beginning, this is not an attack on either Vice, the author of the article, or the president. It's just those things sort of got me in this line of thinking. So, anyway, I'll talk to you soon, guys. Bye-bye.